Well, good afternoon, everyone. Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year. We are back with Career Talk with OG. And today I have a good friend, un amigo, carnal, hermano, Dr. Sal Bueno. Dr. Sal Bueno. Buenas tardes, Sal. Welcome to Career Talk with OG.
Buenas, buenas. ¿Cómo están todos? OG, thanks for inviting me. Salucita con el cafecito, pues.
Oh,
Es
yeah.
lento, pero
Claro, claro.
salucita con salucito. Thanks for having me on. Good to be here. Looking forward to having a conversation about, being a first generation professional and what does that look like. So, les digo que mi español no está bien, pero mi inglés está peor.
Hey Sal, I gotta tell you, because listen, we gotta Spanglicize this thing, okay? Let's do it. You just reminded me, I've lost both my parents, and but you just reminded me of my dad. He didn't speak English, and so he would have said it the other way around. You said your Spanish is not that good. He would have said and that his English was not that good, but instead he would have said, "Y mi inglés está para la chingada." That's what he would have said.
Yeah. So I believe I don't know, my English is worse than my Spanish, and so I'm working on it. En los dos idiomas, pues.
No, that's awesome. But Sal, let me and I'll ask you here. I always like to have my guests start off with giving us the audience a quick overview of their personal story and their career journey. But before you do that, everyone, so Dr. Sal Bueno, he is the founder of Collabucate, which is a research-based and data-driven consulting firm that collaborates with clients in the education space. He is also the author of these, where in 2022, he successfully defended his dissertation, and the title of his dissertation is Factors Contributing to Latino Males' Successful Experience in Higher Education Leadership, a Qualitative Narrative Inquiry. He's also a college professor too as well, and he's also a hashtag chingon. So, Dr. Sal Bueno, again, welcome to Career Talk with OG. Please tell us a little bit about your personal journey, professional career. Well, let's start there.
Awesome. So, I will share that I was raised in East Oakland, so the Bay Area, East Oakland, for over 20 something years. I was raised by my grandmother, who, an immigrant to Estados Unidos, de, Santa Barbara, Chihuahua. And so, I spent time in higher education struggling. And so I'll tie in some of that story as we move forward. But ultimately, I wasn't as successful as I am now. And so, I was expelled from 2 high schools. The last high school I checked that I was expelled from, I had a 0.0 GPA. And so I went to what we call now alternative, right? Pathways.
Oh, yes.
But when I communicate to everybody, I say, look, I was expelled, I was kicked out, and I ended up at continuation school. And so I, luckily enough, graduated from there and attended community college. And over in
community colleges,
Chabot College, I attended Chabot College. I was playing soccer there. And so I want to say that, I am a 3rd generation roofer / construction worker. And so, the roots there of blue collar, hard nosed, dirty work, if you will, are present. And so, I take some of these skills that I've learned, on these job sites. I take some of these skills that I've learned from home, and I apply them into my current role, right?
Hmm.
As adjunct faculty, business faculty, owner, CEO, if you will, right? But ultimately just entrepreneurship, right?
Yes.
And I talk a lot about, even within LinkedIn and my posts, about most importantly being a dad, and that's my number one job.
Yes, yes. I do notice that many of your posts you do start off I think dad or Dr. Dad, and then you continue on, right?
Dr. Dad, it's funny because it took so long to earn my PhD, let alone the other degrees. But my kids were so small. I got pictures with them sitting with me at my desk, conducting research, writing. Um, and as my kids got older, one of them said, like, they were like, "Oh, so you're going to be able to heal us, right? You're going to be able to take care of us when you finish this degree." And I was like, "Well, not necessarily." And then they were like, "Well, what do we call you, Dr. Dad?" And since then it just kind of stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, if I can't communicate what I do to my kids and they can't see the beauty in it, then sadly, what do I care what everyone else thinks, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. That right? They think, Doctor, you're going to be able to heal us, and you know what? So and we'll go into because today's topic is on overcoming the pressure to be the perfect first generation professional. And the comment that you made, the quick little story that you shared about your children saying, "Oh, you're going to be able to heal us." That nativity, right? That innocence, right? In their mind about my dad's going to be a doctor, right? And we equate doctor with a medical doctor. It reminds me of, in some cases, my parents not knowing the education system, and therefore, in their mind, I'm going off to college. I'm going to get some kind of a specific degree that then therefore that specific degree is going to lead to a specific job, and you and I know that not necessarily excuse me, we know that's not necessarily the case because that the education system is different here in the US. But um okay, Sal, so let's start off first of all. um your first gen professional, correct?
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean when you hear the label, the term first gen professional? What does that mean to Sal?
That means that, que uno trabaja en la oficina, de ser administración or oficinista, if you will. When I look at first gen professional, I think about, entering the workforce in a white collar, career path versus my experience as a blue collar worker, right? So that's what resonates with me. That's my connection. Like, I made it. I work in an office. There's an air conditioning, and pues me puedo vestir, I could dress nice and smell good and look good, mind you. I laugh now, and some of my family members will say, "Oh, he's a pencil pusher now. All he does is paperwork." Like, look at his, look at his fingernails. They're clean now, right? Uh, and so talk about pressure, now
Yeah,
now it's like, oh, you sold out, you're in this workforce, and how some might say, ahora sí te crees muy chingón,
yes,
that's kind of what I see. And I think there's comedians who talk about it, and there's a lot of TikTok and social
yeah.
media that talks about, I think George Lopez said it in the beginning, like, oh, that muy chingón with his Target vest. He's got this really good job now, so that's what I think about, going into this white collar versus a blue collar
Yeah,
workforce,
yeah.
where manual labor doesn't exist.
Yes, yes. Oh my God. There's just on a tangent here. You reminded me of now. I'm bad with remembering titles of movies. I don't remember if it was Mi Familia. I think it was Mi Familia. Um, there's a scene where one of the brothers goes off to college. His name is Guillermo.
Mhm.
Okay,
Memo,
Guillermo goes. Guillermo, yeah, Memo.
memo.
Memo goes off to college, and and his other brother and other siblings, they're involved in gangs and so forth. Anyways, one of the other brothers ends up going to prison, and he gets out of prison. So he goes back home, and the scene is that the brother that was in the prison is in the living room, and Guillermo walks in the house, not knowing that his brother just got released from prison, and walks in, and obviously he's surprised, like, oh, my brother's here, and the brother that was in prison is happy to see his Guillermo, so he
Yeah.
gets up, Guillermo, hey, and then Guillermo says, "Excuse me, my name is William."
Right.
And so you're right, like, right. I mean, and that's a classic, right? This whole, as we oftentimes talk about, the straddling of two worlds, and in some cases might even be a third world, right? Our own world, where
Right.
we kind of remove ourselves and we're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Where do I fit in? What's, ¿Qué pasó? Now they're calling me a pencil pusher. Now that they're for Christmas, they're giving me a coupon to get my nails done, or what?
Yeah. And thanks to my friends, or colleagues, peers, most importantly, the therapist, right, that helps us through those processes of even balancing, as I sit here and look at the screen, right? Dr. Sal Bueno, right? Dr. Salvador Bueno. And so, even as we change our names, and again, not to go down a tangent of changing our names in order to obtain some of these jobs, but even then, just how we communicate names, etc. I
Yeah.
some of my colleagues historically have struggled with Salvador, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But hey, listen. When they go to the wine bar, they don't struggle ordering the charcuterie board.
Yeah,
Okay, saying that, cabrones.
yeah,
But so Sal, let's talk a little. Let's start here with familia first, and you
yeah,
you kind of touched upon some of the challenges, right? As you Because again, I love some of your posts where you show pictures of yourself
right,
working up in the roof.
yeah,
Dude, I mean, that's hard work, man. Especially you're down in the Central Valley area, and I mean, it's hard work anywhere. But man, during the summertime when it's freaking 110,
yeah,
120, whatever, and you're up on that hot roof,
right.
chingándole bien y bonito. I mean, that's hard work. Let's talk about this out. When you decided you decided that you wanted to pursue an education,
Yeah,
your BA, and then ultimately your
yeah,
doctorate.
yeah,
Ty, if it's okay with you,
yeah.
what allow us to go inside your mind during that time period.
That's
What
good.
was going through your mind in terms of, like, did you feel that you were capable of achieving that? Did you feel like you were, again, selling out? What was going through your mind?
Wow, that's a jam-packed question, with definitely emotions tied to it. And so, I think the power of story and narrative is important for not only people who look like us, like you and I, but other individuals from other razas as well, because they may have had some experiences like this. And so I mentioned that, I'm a third generation roofer, construction worker. I mean, this was embedded in us, as kids, as young men,
Yeah.
and anything else aside from working with your hands wasn't considered masculine for
Mm,
our household, right?
yes,
Um,
yes.
my uncles did it on were roofers. They on both sides. De mi papa y de mi mama. Actually, my grandmother, um, not to go into too much detail, but my grandmother uh, remarried my father's stepfather. He was an owner of a roofing company in Oakland, and so I remember just being around them, and so that's all I knew, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, if you recall the picture that I put up on LinkedIn where I'm literally on the roof, that's the portrait. There's a landscape that I may have posted as well where there's three other guys on the roof, and the compas, if you will. And I remember this day clearly, thanks to my sister for finding this picture. But I remember this clearly because the shirt that I have on is a soccer shirt that I would use also when I would go train in community college. And I remember this day where my father was and another individual that was there, and they were like, dude, like, using explicit languages, right? Like
Yes.
you don't need to be doing this anymore. Like you are in a better space. You're at college, you're playing, you're trying to strive for something better than we could have. So on one hand, you get the, oh, you're a pencil pusher, you no longer work. They, as maybe some would call now, oh, they bully you, the family bullying, right? But in this case, it's also the pressure of, man, like, it's not just for yourself and for your household, it extends the family. It extends for you to go on and get educated, because they're telling you to. So uh, that's a picture, in Oakland, off of, my sister lived off of 38th Avenue, um, in Oakland. And this was a monumental moment of, echándole ganas. Mind you, I still worked in construction, up until, you know I put the roof on at Fresno Pacific University, and they're doing a story on it as well, a news article or something. But this was post education, post associate's degree, post, you know transfer window, if you will. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm back here again, putting a roof on another building. But this was the skill set that I had. This was a skill set that was helping me fund some of my educational journey. So to go back to your question of what I was feeling and what was the moment, that picture, that's a very monumental moment. And I carried a lot of this uh perfectionism, if you will, on my shoulder, because I don't know about your household, but in my household and in culture, your last name means something. you know and
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and when you carry this last name, you carry the legacy, you carry your family, you carry those that you're connected with, that know you. And so I really didn't want to screw up. Oh,
Yes.
thanks for sharing.
There it is,
Yeah.
everyone. I mean, you can see this picture here. I found it. I found it. Mira nomás.
Yeah. So again, that's the portrait. There's, my father's on the roof there. Chico's on the roof there. Dirk is on the roof there. And here's this collegiate athlete, if you will. I mean, maybe some people now will be like, oh, you only went to community college to play sports. But, here's a collegiate athlete who gave up, what I thought was my identity. And if I'm being honest, some days, I feel like that is still my identity. It's still in there somewhere. And this allows me to break through a lot of the barriers that we are associated with, as first gen professionals.
Yes, yes. Now, this is a very powerful, powerful image here, and I do remember you sharing this photo on LinkedIn, this professional platform that many of us are afraid to post personal stuff. That's a whole different topic there, but it's powerful. It's powerful. I love it because the way I looked at it, Sal, again, myself also as a first gen professional, is I saw here the the continuation, the support of your family, and the continuation of a legacy. Because think of that, right? You're a father. I'm a father. I'm a parent. What do we want for our kids? We want the best for them. We want them to have more than what we had. And so your father, your family for 3 generations, being roofers, they did the best that they could to with what they had, and here you are standing, figuratively speaking, on their shoulders. You're standing on on a roof similar to the way your family has done, and it's powerful. I love it. It's and this is part of the reason why I wanted to or I invited you to be on the show because you we oftentimes, I think, feel guilty as first gen professionals. We feel guilty of wanting more, of striving for more, of having more. I mean, do you think so? What do you think, Sal, on that?
Yes. And while you were saying that, I was just thinking about like survivor's remorse, and I know
Mm,
that's a little deep, right? But I almost feel like survivor's remorse of like, I made it and why didn't they? I survived and why didn't they? Now, I want to make sure that, I'm using the term lightly. So please, don't come for me, whoever's out there, right? Um, but in this case, that's how I feel sometimes, like, then I come back and I communicate to them, and I'm trying to encourage and express how amazing, education is and what education can do for you, you know. So yeah, I think a lot of that, what I would associate with survivors remorse of, but just, you know feeling guilty of like that wasn't enough,
yeah,
mind you, um had I continued, right, within this field of roofing, I could possibly retired already. I was already considered, I was already considered a journeyman by my peers, and I was running jobs on my own, and you know doing side jobs, and I went off and got my Class A construction license and my roofer's certification, and so I could have been retired already, but something about crossing over to
yeah.
the other side of professionalism or white collar worker is very enticing to me.
Do you feel, Sal, that many of us first gen professionals don't feel we are worthy of, to use your word, of crossing over?
Um, I think this is where we see the abnormal becoming the normal. And I think it's so ingrained in us. Again, for me as a kid, chingale, work hard, tú nomás dale, like,
Yeah,
and I think, guess I shouldn't say I think, I know that was ingrained in me, you know?
yes.
So, oftentimes, yeah, you could feel bad about those things.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've had that too, right? That to work hard because, again, I also came or come from blue collar parents, and that's all my parents knew how to succeed by working hard is how you succeed. And in some cases, maybe I know there were times in our life where it wasn't about succeeding; it was just about surviving, about having food, something to eat. That you work hard. Um, so now take us into the professional setting.
Okay.
You're now gotten your undergrad degree. You've enrolled in your the doctorate program, which is even a much more elite um, group. And there's even, I would imagine, that probably even less minority professionals, probably even much less Latino professionals pursuing their doctorate. So now, I mean, if you were in, let's just say back when you were helping your family, working as a roofer, if that was your element, and then you go on to community college, and that circle of comfort kind of shrunk a little bit, and then it shrunk even more as an undergrad. Now you're in your doctorate. It's small.
Yeah.
Okay, take us through again. You're there. How is Sal feeling? How are you adapting to this new environment? How are you maintaining your identity and then embracing a new identity?
Um, I'll share a quick story. Um, and shout out to Gabriel. Um, I'll- um, he helped me get my first professional job working with surgeons. They were orthopedic surgeons. So they worked a lot on you know, the spine, the C spine, right? And so they did extremities, hips, etc. And I literally was on the roof on a Thursday before class. We went to class from 6 to 10, and I came to class frustrated, and they could see it. My peers, mind you, they would come to work in suits. At the doctor's office, they would wear suits. And so I came to class. I was frustrated. They asked me some questions, and I said, you know what, I'm just not applying any of what I'm learning, the concepts, the terms, into construction. And they were like, he said, hey, there may be some job openings, etc. Let's give it a shot. I could schedule you an interview for tomorrow, which was Friday. Mind you, I had suits, but it was more para la iglesia, so they weren't professional together.
Para el
Uh,
bautismo, la quinceañera.
yeah, right. and so um I had an interview Friday. I've always had the ability to communicate and make connections with people. And I don't know if that's just being authentic, who knows, or, the man above shining down on me and just giving me some of those dons, right? That may be hard for other people to do so. And so I wowed the doctor. They call me back and they're like, hey, matter of fact, we got two available positions. This position and this position. And mind you, I didn't know how to type. I didn't know, things like that, if you will, processes will work. So, anyways, work there. And so it was a total shock. It was definitely a total shock. I was out of my element. Just being in the environment. How do we communicate? Right. And I remember the doctor, took me under his wing. Here I am side by side with the doctor now, right? He converted me to a medical assistant. Sorry to those who go to school and went to school for that, but doctor had a pathway that I could do. He would sign off, etc., go to the board. So it was beautiful, right? I'm learning about all these things. I'm learning how to read film and communicating. And I really learned a lot from him just based upon what does that mean to be a professional in his lens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So mind you, here I am trying to keep track of my culture because I just moved from Oakland. So
Oaktown,
Oakland,
baby. Oaktown.
yeah. So the Oaklandish in me was very present, and the construction worker in me was very present, meaning when I would have conversations with people, I would just fire off whatever was on my mind, whatever was on my heart, and made an impact negatively because of what our professionalism or norms look like.
Yeah.
So I was very much caught between two totally different worlds.
Hmm. And many of us first gen professionals find ourselves in caught or in those two worlds. I remember Sal. I was a Chicano studies major at Berkeley, and I remember this one article, research paper that I read. Obviously, it made an impression on me, and they used the metaphor of masks. How in in American society, Chicanos, and this applies to many minorities, is that we have this mask in that when we walk out of the house to go to work, we put on this mask of, what we call professionalism, right? Or whatever the norm is, for that company or the company culture, et cetera, and so forth. And then, we put on the mask of William, and then we come home, take off the mask, and then, we're Guillermo, we're right ourselves. And 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 I and while we have made strides in those areas to be more our authentic selves, I think many of us still experience that, still struggle with that identity, right? Embracing it. I also believe too that I think it's kind of we I see more with those of us that are 40 and older, this generation that we are versus the younger generation, the Gen Zs, the young the young millennials, where they've kind of been more there, thanks to something that's like, me vale, like this is who I am. Like, think about tattoos.
Yeah.
Back in the day, tattoos were like a no. Now you can be all tatted up and then it's like, oh, okay, como si nada, right?
Right.
But now, so when you, let's say you're mentoring a young professional, you like the story you just shared with us, this doctor that was mentoring you, right? So let's flip the roles here. You are now mentoring a young professional
Right.
in their career journey. What advice would you give them to help them not to minimize or not have to experience that pressure of being that perfect first gen professional?
Yeah.
What are some, 3 or 4 or 5 tips that you would give them?
Yeah, and that's interesting because when doctor was providing this feedback, like I didn't know it was mentorship, right?
Mm,
I thought it was criticism. I'm like,
uh,
this guy telling me what to do all the time, telling me how to dress, telling me, fix my tie, telling me to button up. I remember he used to say, mind you, no estaba barbudo, but there was a code in the office, like, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you had to dress a certain way, and you had to keep your beard down. It had to be clean. If that, he would allow mustache and possibly even a little beard, but
yeah,
OT, if you will. And so I would advise individuals to identify what is, mentorship and sponsorship, right? What does that look like? Number
yeah,
one, right? The other thing would be that, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions to individuals that are around you, right? Whether that's possibly in the career that you're looking to go into. Um, start to check your thought process, right? I like, and I'm sure there's profound terms for this, but I'll just say, you are what you think, right? And so much I believe that, right? So much I
yeah,
believe that the way I was thinking wasn't was literally the way I was living. And so make sure that you identify those mentors, accept that feedback, right? Identify that feedback, because there's criticism and then there's feedback, right? So make sure that
yes,
it's feedback. Tap into who you are. What does that self-awareness look like, right? Um, mind you, I would connect, what some might say, that they maybe go on spiritual journeys or devotional time, etc. I do take some quiet time and self-reflect, like what do I need to change? How can
yes,
I improve? So I mean, there's many more, but these are the ones that are prevalent that I see. Is make sure that you check into to mentors or those careers. So find one, right? Find one,
yes,
even if it's a program. Connect with the program, and then, again, self-awareness, and so that you can receive some of that feedback and adjusting your thought process, that it's not criticism, right? Don't take it personal, right? And
yes. Those are all some excellent advice there, Sal, and so beneficial to anyone, regardless of where you are in your career journey, but in this case, especially for these young professionals. And Sal, I have one more question here for you before we wrap it up. Um, so you just gave a young professional this wonderful advice. Um, as you know, in Latino culture, familia is super important. We're close, right? They have a tremendous amount of influence on us, good or bad, right? They have a tremendous amount of influence on us. What advice do you have for family members, whether it's your our parents, tios, or siblings, cousins, close family? What advice do you have for family on how to support that future first gen professional son or daughter?
Wow. Um, I'll put myself. Well, obviously, my kids aren't first gen, but I treat them that way, and I make sure that I always let them know that I am here for support, and whatever that is that they need, I will support them however we can. So, number one for family members, uh, apoyen a los hijos, apoyen a los estudiantes, um, with whatever resources you can, right? And the way we do that is we ask, ¿en qué te puedo ayudar? Right? Shout out to Dr. Gina Ann Garcia, right? Serving this is super important because that's what we do in at home. So what I do is I'll communicate to my household and say, how can I serve you? How can I support you? Right? I don't want to just give money because maybe they don't need money, right? Maybe they need
Yeah,
talks, guidance, right?
yeah.
So number one is be there for them, ask them what they need and how you can help them. Because again, as we know that our new generation, right? We don't want to definitely be helicopter parents or guiding, but we really want to find out what they need.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, Sal, as I'm listening to you and all your amazing wisdom and tips here, right now you just took me back to my parents too as well. And they didn't speak English. They didn't understand the education system. They didn't understand many things here in the U.S. And the one thing that my parents did, they did many things, but one thing that they did to support me was to give me the freedom to explore. They didn't get in the way because sometimes we don't know how to support our children, and then but we become protective, and
Mhm.
so therefore we hold them back from doing or certain things. And I think it's also a gender thing too as well, because I think it happens more to our Latina hermanas, Latina sisters, where Latino culture tends to do that, to hold women back from exploring things, in the name of protecting you,
Right.
and so forth. And my parents always said, "Hey, mijo, si tú crees que eso te va a ayudar, va a ser bueno, te apoyamos. Son, if you think that's going to help you, we'll support you." And they didn't necessarily push me, but they also didn't get in the way
Right.
as well. But Sal, I told you, man, we could talk here for a long
Absolutely.
time, but there's so many topics, so many areas that we could go down to, but we're going to be wrapping it up here. Um, as we wrap it up, Sal, any final thoughts, comments, words, anything that comes to your mind right now that you want to close with?
Yeah, I think um those individuals that are, navigating, first gen professionalism, know that there's other people around. Know that you can reach out. Join platforms like LinkedIn, additional social medias. If you're conducting research, send an email to that individual who maybe wrote something so that you can learn again how to navigate these environments. Not saying that because I did it, you know, um, that you'll follow the similar pathways, but there are some learning factors that I experience. And again, from a dad first is how I communicate to individuals, because I'm around students and I just tell them like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to communicate. Don't have everything figured out. You don't need to. Adapt as you go along. So, make sure again that you just reach out and you ask for help.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that is key. Folks, reach out and ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, okay? So, amazing words of wisdom here again from Dr. Sal Bueno. Sal, love you, dude. Muchísimas gracias, canal, for the your time today, for sharing part of your personal journey, your professional journey as well, your words of wisdom. So thank you everyone for joining us this week on our first episode of the year of Career Talk with OG. Have an amazing week, and we'll stay in touch, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Adios.
Adios, adios.